attacking millions of Americans because they're Muslims? It's disgusting. And I'm a Christian. I'm not a Muslim. I know there's a lot of effort to claim I'm a secret jihadi. I'm not. You should not attack people on those grounds. And you're seeing it from Republicans. What the hell are you doing? Oh, go hate each other while we loot the treasury. That's exactly what's going on. What you're doing is trying to divide the country. And I've lived through 50 years of this crap.
Tucker Carlson is someone I've been warning about. I think Tucker Carlson is deceived. We're all made in the image of God. We all have souls. He emphasized that. I agree with that. He said that racism and anti-Semitism are immoral. He spent quite a lot of time talking about that. He said that the left wants to divide us while they seize power. Part of this is Tucker Carlson's problem. I believe Tucker Carlson is a bit of a Boy Scout, and he is too ready to accept other people on the terms at which they present themselves to him. Tucker Carlson seems to me that he fails to understand there's a difference between attacking Islam as an ideology of conquest and misogyny, which it is. Americans are generally a very gracious, generous people. I just don't see the average American being unkind, much less attacking someone because they're a Muslim. Welcome to another episode of Ideas Have Consequences with me, Larry Alex Taunton. And today we are talking about Tucker Carlson. Now, I have mentioned Tucker Carlson before. I think I've even done a show on Carlson before, but I became really quite fascinated with his speech at Turning Point's AmFest last week, which got a lot of attention. And I began seeing, a lot of clips of Carlson speaking there. And it gives us an opportunity to kind of break down what it is that Carlson believes, what's in his DNA, and what is it that's driving him in this seismic political shift that has occurred with him, with anybody who's been paying attention over the course of the last 2 years. But I would say the last year, it has really accelerated. Now, so you will know that I haven't taken anything here, and you can verify that I haven't taken anything here out of context. We will place in the show notes the entire talk. We will place a link to the entire talk, which I think is about 40 minutes, 45 minutes with all the Q&A afterwards. So you can go and look at it and watch it yourself. But it's sometimes funny to me how people will drop into the comments and tell me that I didn't listen to something, or tell me that I'm taking it out of context, or telling me that somebody didn't say something when I showed that they did. And in this case, we don't have the time to show the entire presentation of Tucker Carlson, but I'm going to show you just a few key clips that I think are important and are in context. It's quite clear what Carlson is saying here. And again, if by some chance the link doesn't work, or our guys forget to put it in there, all you have to do is go and look on YouTube, look up Tucker Carlson's AmFest presentation 2025. It's there. It's available for you to see. But during the Christmas holiday, I listened to it no less than 3 times, the entire thing. And then I went back and I listened to several clips over and over again to be clear, to be confident that I was hearing him correctly. Now, there are a couple of other clips that I was going to use, and then I decided I want to give Carlson the benefit of the doubt here, that I might be misunderstanding his meaning here. But the clips that I'm using in the show today, there's no misunderstanding about Carlson's meaning. Now, I should say from the outset that I agreed with about 90% of what he had to say. Indeed, I would have applauded Carlson at a number of points during his presentation, as people there did. And for good reason, because he was saying a number of things that we could, or at least I could, and I think members of the posse could, the listeners to this show, could get on board with. The talk was mainly, interestingly enough, kind of a presentation of his own Christian faith and how it shapes his worldview. I'm on board with that. Carlson stated very clearly that he is a Christian. I'm cool with that. He spoke of the importance of free speech. So very important. And this was something he said that had really had turned him against the left in a big way, was their attack on free speech. And that he's against the canceling of people. I think sometimes that can be misunderstood. And I think Carlson does misunderstand canceling at least a little bit. People deciding they don't like what someone has to say is not the same as canceling someone. To me, canceling someone is what happened to my friend and my colleague Lawrence Fox, with whom I do the show WTF. He was, I won't say fired, that didn't actually happen, but they just decided no more will you be allowed to get a job in the industry. It's what's called collusion. It's actually illegal. And Lawrence, just all of a sudden, when he spoke out very publicly against things that were happening in his home country, in the UK, he didn't get any more jobs. He just did not get any more jobs in Hollywood. And I refer to Hollywood as, maybe those in the industry mean something very specific in a place. I just refer to the whole industry as Hollywood. But that's canceling. People taking issue with what Tucker Carlson has to say, with what Candace Owens has to say, that's not the same thing as canceling. So I'm not trying to cancel anyone here on this show, and far be it from me to do so. It's not within my power to do that. And if I was seeking to cancel someone, it wouldn't be them. These are people that the people that I disagree with, I actually want speaking. And it's because I want people listening to what they have to say, because it is my hope that sensibility will lead people to the right conclusions regarding them when over time they begin to see who they really are. And I was one of the first people to publicly criticize Candace Owens a couple of years ago. And at that time, she was still thought of as a conservative. And I took some heat for that. I can't believe you'd say that. Why are you attacking our own side? And I was trying to say to people, she's not on our side. She is not a conservative. She's anti-woke, which is one thing. And she's also a nut job conspiracy theorist, but she's definitely not a conservative. And over time, people are increasingly arriving at that same conclusion as to where I land on that. You have, much bigger platforms than mine who are now saying it, but they weren't saying it then. And Tucker Carlson is someone I've been warning about. I don't see him as dangerous as Candace Owens is. I think Carlson is sincere, and I should underscore that. I do believe that Carlson is sincere. I don't think Candace Owens is sincere. I think Candace Owens is a deceiver. I think Tucker Carlson is deceived, and there is a distinction between those two. But again, he's not deceived about free speech. I agreed with him that. He said that Christians shouldn't hate people because of who they are or the way they're born. And I agree with that. He wasn't speaking of homosexuality in this context. He was talking about anti-Semitism. He was saying you shouldn't hate somebody who's Jewish just because they're born Jewish. And I agree with that. There's truth in that. And he went on to talk about that the dignity of individuals, because they're all, whether they're Christian or not, we're all made in the image of God. We all have souls. He emphasized that. I agree with that. He said that racism and anti-Semitism are immoral. He spent quite a lot of time talking about that. He said that the left wants to divide us while they seize power. Absolutely true. I applaud that as well. That is very true. He said we should be able to respectfully disagree with one another. Usually, or often, I don't know what the percentage would be, but it's best when we can achieve that. But in some cases, you simply can't do that. And by the way, I think part of this is Tucker Carlson's problem. I believe Tucker Carlson is a bit of a Boy Scout, and he is too ready to accept other people on the terms at which they present themselves to him. If they seem nice to him and they seem sincere, he accepts them as that. When, maybe looking looking at the big picture of who some of these individuals are that he might platform on his show, he might begin to question motive. But he says he doesn't question motive, that that's not what he's about. And he said that it is the moral obligation of American politicians to put America and her citizens first. And if you don't do that, you're an illegitimate government and should be replaced. I agree wholeheartedly with that. So again, Tucker Carlson said a lot of things that I agree with, but the devil, as they say, is in the details. And the devil was in the other 10% of Tucker Carlson's talk. Consider this following clip from Carlson. Now, let's listen to this.
Most Americans have more in common with each other than they disagree on. And almost everybody agrees on that. And almost everybody is willing to tolerate a good faith argument about how to get there. Except a few. And they're the ones running around calling everyone an anti-Semite. But everyone else is like, yeah, of course, that should be the debate. And they'll vote for you. They want that because they know they haven't had that. That's the fact. And what you're watching now, attacking millions of Americans because they're Muslims, it's disgusting. And I'm a Christian. I'm not a Muslim. I know there's a lot of effort to claim I'm a secret jihadi. I'm not. You should not attack people on those grounds. And you're seeing it from Republicans. What the hell are you doing? What you're doing is trying to divide the country. And I've lived through 50 years of this crap. All these fake race wars that they're always promoting. Oh, go hate each other while we loot the treasury. That's exactly what's going on. And most people are totally sick of that. So, yes, there is a possibility for a huge coalition of decent people once they free their minds from the traps set for them by others and realize, wait a second, we all want to make this country better. And the 15% or 30% who don't, okay. You know, good luck in Maryland or wherever you wind up. But the rest of us would like to fix it.
A lot to unpack in what he just said there. He's speaking there, the broader context of that on either sides of that. And again, you can go watch the entire thing. You should find the clip to the entire speech in our show notes. But he's talking about how his faith guides him, his belief in God, and how we treat individuals and that they have souls and so forth, as we were just talking about. But he then goes on to very subtly define Islam as a race. Did you catch that? You shouldn't attack people because they're Muslims. And then he goes on to say, just to remind you, this is, what the left is doing. This is what the elitists are doing, is all of these fake race wars. Islam is not a race. It is an ideology of conquest. There is a big difference between the two. And I found it fascinating that Carlson should do this because it's exactly what the left is doing, the way they're actually trying to legally define Islamophobia in Britain. Because by linking it to race, they can call it racism. And it becomes something else. It becomes something, much larger. And they can label you as a racist when, in fact, you're addressing an ideology. It would be like saying you can't speak out against Nazism because Nazism is a race. It's the Aryan people. You can't say that. You can't condemn people for the way they're born. And Carlson, in condemning anti-Semitism, condemned it, as I just pointed out, because you're condemning people because they're born Jewish. But he's claiming subtly that people are born Muslim. No one's born Muslim. No one is born Christian. No one is born Hindu. No one is born Buddhist. And that's because it's not a race. It's not an ethnicity. It is an ideology that you must adopt. And that to me is quite pernicious. Now, again, I will give Tucker Carlson the benefit of the doubt here because I don't think Tucker Carlson is endeavoring to be pernicious. But this is problematic. It is extremely problematic. Then what does he do? He goes on to say, again, if you listen carefully, you back up in this video and watch it again. he says that there is an opportunity for an enormous coalition among conservatives. That's who he's talking about. And conservatives are mostly Christians and Muslims, American Muslims. There's the opportunity for a big coalition there. You cannot make a coalition with people who are adherents to an ideology that is, as I say, more comparable to Nazism. And I don't say this as hyperbole. I'm not just bringing up Nazis because that's what everybody does these days and accuses you the minute you say something they don't like that you're a Nazi. I'm saying it because it's true in this case. It's more comparable insofar it is an ideology of hate. It is an ideology of conquest. It is fundamentally racist. It's fundamentally anti-freedom, misogynistic, you name it. It is an ideology of conquest. In uncertain times, wise investors look for stability. Markets are overinflated. Inflation remains a concern, and global tensions continue to rise. That's why many are turning to the safety of physical gold and silver. Alpha Omega Gold is a Christian-owned precious metals company known for honesty, transparency, and biblical stewardship principles. Their team help clients protect their investment with integrity and clear guidance, never pressure. Right now, Alpha Omega Gold is offering a free precious metals navigation guide to explain why owning gold and silver can be a smart, strategic hedge for retirement accounts and long-term security. Don't wait until economic shifts impact your future. So today, go and visit www.ao.gold/IHC or call 855-4AO-GOLD. That's 855-426-4653. Call today to learn how simple it can be to secure what matters most. Now, Carlson says, and I agree with this, by the way, he says most Muslims are very nice people. I don't have any data on that. I can just simply tell you that when I've been in Muslim countries, I have met, and by that I mean Muslim majority countries, as opposed to Islamic states. There is a little bit of a difference there. When I've been in portions of Europe that are heavily populated by Muslims, I meet many friendly Muslims. I have formed working relationships with a number of Muslims who I respect a great deal, but not because they're Muslims. You see, those Muslims, he just doesn't seem to understand this. Those nice Muslims that he's referring to, they're nice in spite of Islam. They're people, and I've had Muslims tell me this, that they don't take their religion seriously because they don't want to, because they know how violent it is. And therefore, they stay away from the Hadith, they stay away from the Quran, they stay away from the mosque and the teachings of the imams and other clerics, because they don't want to be made to feel like they're bad Muslims, and because they don't want to turn on their Jewish and Christian and Buddhist and Hindu neighbors. They don't want to do that. But Orthodox Islam, lowercase o, requires them to do that, and that's why they don't want to do it. So the so-called nice Muslims are the Muslims who are nice not because they're Muslims, but because they choose really not to be Muslims in anything other than name. And that is incredibly important. You see, a huge difference. But when people want to bring up, say, the Salem witch trials and say, look at what Christians do, show me in what manner that was Christian. Where in God's word did he tell them to do that? Well, of course, he didn't. So anyone who claims to be a Christian and is committing egregious crimes against other human beings, they're lying if they're saying that this is a Christian act. Jesus himself in John chapter 16, verses 2 and 3, he says this, and it's worth remembering. It's overlooked all the time. Jesus is speaking to the disciples, and he says, I tell you, the time is coming that there will be those who will kill in my name. He is warning them. There will be people who will come along. They're going to kill you and say they're doing it for me. But they aren't. So if a Presbyterian made himself a suicide bomber and charged into a mosque and blew it up, we can say with confidence that what he did contravened the laws of God, of the biblical God, of the real God. But if a Muslim does it, what he's doing is perfectly consistent with his religion. You see the difference. There's a very significant difference between the two. And that's why I keep saying to you, when Senator Tommy Tuberville, senator of my state, is saying repeatedly, and he is, that we must ban Sharia law in the United States, and I'm in total agreement with that. But if I had the opportunity to, and I hope to, Senator Tuberville, I know you've been very busy. We've reached out in an effort to sit down with you, and I hope that time will come. I want nothing other than to help you in your argument. I would say we have to go one back from Sharia. It's Islam itself. Sharia is, a couple of doors down. Islam itself is antithetical to our Constitution, to our laws, to our moral values, to our way of life, if it's practiced seriously. The only way Muslims can live in the United States and not be contrary to our laws is by ignoring their own faith, their own stated faith. So when Tucker Carlson is here saying we should go and form a huge coalition, conservatives, Christians, Republicans should go and try to form a big coalition with all these Muslims in Dearborn, Michigan and Minneapolis, St. Paul, I say no, because their values are not our values. If they want to vote with us, wonderful, great. But their values are not our values. And we do not want them in positions of power, lest they begin to take their religion seriously. But then Carlson does this, which I find just absolutely astonishing. His entire speech, which again is largely about his own Christian faith, he brings it back to Israel. And it's like you knew this was coming. He haven't said anything really about it throughout the entire talk, other than to say, insist repeatedly that he's not an anti-Semite, and I don't think he is in the way that it's typically meant. But you're sitting there through the first 10, 15, 20 minutes, and you're going, I just know somehow this is going to come back to Israel. And boom, it does. That's where he ends up. It's like he just can't help himself. It's like he has some kind of Tourette syndrome where just randomly he blurts out things about Israel and Gaza. He just is obsessed. And what is at the bottom of the obsession? Has he talked about Ukraine as much? Probably close with Ukraine early on, when the war was getting started in earnest. Maybe he did, but it seems like his focus should be on what's happening in Venezuela. The President of the United States striking in Nigeria, which, by the way, I applaud. I'm not for the war in Ukraine. I would be on Tucker Carlson's side in that, but for very different reasons. I think Ukraine and Russia are both deeply corrupt. And I've spent a fair amount of time in both of those countries, much more than Tucker Carlson. And I can say that with some confidence because Carlson was taken around by Putin's people and shown a Potemkin village. He did not see the real Russia and came away thinking it was wonderful and a better place to live than the United States. Just absolutely incredible. But he can't help himself but blurt out things regarding the Jews and Israel. Consider how he spoke in this particular talk with passion about the killing of innocents, and he did. We did play that clip for you here, but you can go and watch it. And he goes on and on and on about the killing of innocents. And you're thinking, who exactly is he talking about here? Because at first he wasn't very specific about it. Was he talking about October 7th? And what happened to those innocent people? Raped, murdered, held in underground bunkers as hostages? No, that's not who he was talking about. How about the Bondi Beach massacre? where all those people, Jewish people, were shot with rifles by Muslims. Was that what he was talking about? Nope. That wasn't what he was talking about. Was he talking about the roughly 250,000 adolescent British white girls who are trafficked in Britain, who've had almost no one speak for them? No. No, it wasn't these. Those are not the innocents he's talking about. Maybe he meant Charlie Hebdo. 2015, the Bataclan, the Hypercacher market attack, the attacks in 2015 in Paris that claimed the lives of 137 people. No, that's not what he was talking about either. Was he talking about the annihilation of Christians in Nigeria? No, that wasn't it either. Listen to what he has to say, what he had to say about that. This is maybe a month ago on his own show. Listen carefully here.
No one said anything about it, but Cruz specifically, but he's all of a sudden, kind of out of nowhere, deeply concerned about the plight of Christians in Nigeria, which I want to restate. Maybe a totally valid concern. I don't know. But that's weird. What is that? All of a sudden, everybody's concerned about people who clearly have no track record of being interested in Christians at all, including Ted Cruz. What is going on? Where is this coming from?
Well, in fact, what's interesting is they're calling it a genocide. And a genocide, under international legal terms, requires an intent. And certainly it's a very strange scenario where you have a government richly populated by Christians and accusing them of some form of genocide.
The president, whose wife's a Christian pastor. So, but I mean, one thing I do understand is coordinated propaganda, and this is coordinated propaganda. Is it?
Look, I can tell you that the Nigerians have no idea where this is coming from.
To me, that's just astonishing. I have spent time in Nigeria covering this, as I've mentioned before, for Fox News. I went to the north central part of the country where much of the persecution, the attacks are taking place. I don't know who this guy is talking to and saying the Nigerians collectively, they have no idea where this is coming from. This idea that there's a genocide in Nigeria, they don't have a clue. Who's saying this? Who thinks this? We in Nigeria don't, according to this guy. Every Nigerian I spoke of it. And by the way, if the government was complicit in a genocide against Christians, and they are, do you think they would tell you? I mean, how naive can that be? I asked the government, and they're like, I have no idea where this comes from. Who thinks this? Who doesn't know it in this country? Speak to the Christians in the villages, in the hamlets, on the streets. They will tell you because they've suffered it. I've seen it. What Tucker Carlson does right here, and to be fair to Carlson, elsewhere he does talk about the persecution of Christians around the world, and he does express a real concern for it. But I thought this was wicked. And it's because for his own ideological purposes, he decided he was going after Ted Cruz and he was going to downplay the persecution of Christians. Indeed, just dismiss it as propaganda. That's what he says. That it's just propaganda. And it's not. It's real. These people are being slaughtered. Why do that? Why do that? To me, this is strange. Tucker Carlson wasn't referring to any of the things that I just mentioned, where Muslims were complicit and where we know they were. This isn't hidden. I mean, I even mentioned, 9/11 or, the 7/7 subway bombers or the USS Cole or the shoe bomber and Fort Hood and on and on and on. We can go. Nice, guy driving a truck into a crowd of people in Nice, killing, I think, 86 people. Stockholm, Sweden. Interviewed people there. Carlson's mentioning none of those. The innocents he's referring to are the people of Gaza, in Gaza, which is being used by Hamas and the entire Arab world as a battering ram against Israel to undermine Israel's moral authority. They're very quick. Here you have this guy being interviewed by Tucker Carlson who starts talking about, in some pointy-headed, intellectual, legal way, well, technically speaking, according to international law, their genocide is defined as there must be, what did he say? How did he put it? There must be a motive. There must be, I forget how he put it, but basically what he means, what he's saying is that they must be being killed for an ideological reason or an ethnic reason. That it's not because you are at war with them over a piece of land, but it's because you're going after them because they're Jewish or because they're Christian or, they're Slavs or whatever. Who does he think is doing the killing there? It's the Fulani Herdsman Militia, which is an Islamic terrorist group. And it is Boko Haram, which is an Islamic terrorist group. We know this. We know this. Well, I'm not quite sure. Pearl clutching. I wish I had some pearls here. I'd look like Sam Brinton or, what was the guy who wore the dress in the Biden administration? Rachel Levine, and his real name is like Phil, or something like that. I can't remember. Pearl clutching. Well, I'm just not sure it's genocide. You're damn right it's genocide. They are killing them because they're Christians, and they've been doing it for roughly 1,400 years, all over the world. I have said this repeatedly, and I'm going to say it again here. Christians are dying, according to very credible research at Gordon Conwell Seminary, and according to the Human Rights Organization in Frankfurt, Germany, Christians are dying at a rate of 100,000 a year in what is called a situation of witness, meaning not in automobile accidents or, because they drug overdosed or old age or cancer, meaning a situation of witness. They're dying because they're Christians. They're being killed. And at a rate of 100,000 a year. Spectator magazine calls it the greatest unreported catastrophe of our time. And goes on to say that of all acts of persecution around the world, 80% are against Christians, making them the most persecuted group in the world. 100,000 a year. That translates to 11 per hour. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And Tucker Carlson, what is his focus on? Gaza. Gaza. The Jews. To me, it's more than a little odd that in a talk largely about his own Christian faith, Tucker Carlson ignores the undeniable pattern. He just whitewashes it. He just memory holes the undeniable pattern of slaughter committed by Muslims against Christians and Jews, and says not one word about October 7, which is what led to what's happening in Gaza. And portrays American Christians as attacking Muslims, American Muslims. He says, what the hell are you doing? Attacking American Muslims because they're Muslims. He's saying that it's Republicans, it's conservatives, it's Christians who are doing this. Where is this happening? Please show me. Did I miss something? Tell me. I'm speaking over here to my producer. Are Lutherans mass shooting Muslims? Are you aware of that? Did I miss that? Okay, I didn't think so. Have the Amish been weaponizing their horse-drawn buggies and driving over Muslims at their own festivals. Now, I didn't think so either. So you're not aware of any, of any Amish, driving their horses over the good people of Dearborn, Michigan, or in Minneapolis. So yeah, I didn't think so either. Presbyterian suicide bombers in mosques? No. So this isn't happening. Of course, there are none. This isn't happening. This is an entire fiction. And that Tucker Carlson would suggest that they're attacking Muslims. This is important for Tucker Carlson to understand, but it's also important for you to understand. As Christians, whenever it is possible, we make a distinction between the ideology and the man. Between the ideology and the man. So, for instance, when I debated atheist Christopher Hitchens, I savaged his worldview as it was informed by atheism. Not all of it, because there are aspects of his worldview that I liked quite a lot. I savaged his worldview. I did not attack the man. And that's because I liked the man. He was my friend. But I felt that the atheistic worldview that he was promoting was deadly. And I could look back on the history of the 20th century before that. I could look at the history of the 18th century, the French Revolution, for example, and also see that. But I didn't attack the man. The man was my friend. Now, that's not true in every instance. And sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes you can't, pull the two apart. And to use an extreme, kind of example, I would say that it would be very difficult to simply attack, let's say, Joe Biden's worldview without attacking Biden. And that's because the two are so intertwined and because I believe the man was evil. You understand? But Tucker Carlson, seems to me that he fails to understand there's a difference between attacking Islam as an ideology of conquest and misogyny, which it is, and attacking Muslims, which is not happening. That is a complete fiction. The people where I live in my part of the country, and I dare say in most other parts of this country, because Americans are generally a very gracious, generous people. I just don't see the average American being unkind, much less attacking someone because they're a Muslim. But they might attack the ideology, and should. If for no other reason, because you feel compassion for that individual. I, as a Christian, believe that it is a fake religion. And if you follow that, I believe the destination for you is very unpleasant. Because it involves, among other things, the rejection of Jesus Christ. It's idolatry. So I feel compassion. The desire of my heart as a Christian is to see every Muslim come to know freedom, not the slavery, not the submission of Islam, but the freedom that comes with surrendering your life to Jesus Christ. That's the desire of my heart. But Tucker Carlson here, he frames Christians, conservatives, as persecutors of Muslims. To me, that's so utterly outrageous. And I just think, what neighborhood are you hanging out in that you think this is real? And this is, by the way, is the stuff that leads a lot of people to speculate. And I don't agree with the speculation, but I do understand it. I know why people would wonder if Tucker Carlson is on a payroll of some Arab state, some Muslim country. And by the way, when I say Arab, almost every Arab state is Muslim. Well, they all are. There might be quote unquote secular ones, but they're still Muslim majority countries. Some are Islamic states. Some are, like Egypt, say, are Muslim majority and not Islamic states. But anyway, this has led people to say things like Tucker Carlson, or however they say it, Tucker Carlson. Yeah. People, I believe he's on some big payroll of something like that, and that he's signed off on, yeah, I'm going to be your Tokyo Rose. No, I don't think he is. I don't think that's the case at all. I will explain my theories to what I think has happened to him in just a moment. But just in case you really don't think there's been a change with Tucker Carlson, let's watch this little video. It's a brilliant little video put together by Milk Bar TV. At least it's their watermark that's on it, so I'm assuming it's theirs, and I want to give credit where credit is due. Let's watch this.
It's a large number of Muslims around the world who are sympathetic to these acts of craziness. Pew Research poll findings that 1 of every 4 Muslim Americans younger than 30 believe suicide bombing in the defense of Islam is justifiable. For instance, do you believe that Arabs carried out the 9/11 attacks? Only 40% believe Arabs carried them out. Do they think the Jews did it? I get that decent Muslim Americans feel under attack. They feel like they're being unfairly portrayed as terrorists. I understand all that. But at some point, you have to say, this really is a real problem, and it's discrediting all of us, and until we take it seriously, it's going to continue, no? We can debate the details here, but I think it's important to acknowledge a baseline, and that is that there have been an awful lot of attacks where actual people died in the United States and in Europe, committed by people saying really clearly we're acting in the name of Islam. Hasidic Jews, they're a set-apart community, speak a different language, not assimilated, but I don't see a lot of terror attacks committed by those groups. Often hear Americans say, I have said, including last night, is that assimilation is the problem, these people are not assimilated. And yet you look around, and there are actually a number of groups in our society and yours who aren't assimilated. Hasidic Jews live apart, the Amish live apart. They pose no threat at all to the country they live in. They love the country. Why is this group different? Well, the Muslim population of the West is rising very quickly, and that has implications for social cohesion or national security. So if I say, as Islamic countries do, you don't have a choice. You have to wear the hijab. You need to be modest, and if you're not, you could get raped, and if you do, it's your fault. And you have to avert your gaze from men. For example, women are asked to walk behind their husbands, or in some countries are not allowed to drive or vote. Under certain circumstances, can that be empowering? Can female genital mutilation be empowering? That's common in Islamic countries. An Austrian woman was convicted of, quote, disparaging religion. She was fined more than $500. Her crime was suggesting that Muhammad's marriage to a 6-year-old constituted a form of pedophilia. She claimed her comments were protected by the freedom of speech because she is a European, and traditionally they would have been, but things have changed now. So in other words, a standard that has long prevailed in the Islamic world, which is that you can be punished for criticizing Muhammad, is now the law in Europe. Exactly right. The bomber was born in Britain, not some far-off land, but he still grew up to embrace Islamic radicalism and declare war on the country that raised him and kill his neighbors, in effect. There are many more like him. So when you watch the American response, even the cultural response, to an event like what happened in your country on Monday, are you surprised by how few of the lessons Americans are learning from this?
Sharia law is bad, Seth. I don't know if you've heard that. It's bad. It's worse than what's happening in New York and Detroit. It's just bad.
It's Tucker Carlson at the Real Estate Future Forum 2025.
Never been to Saudi Arabia, and I can't wait to go for a glimpse of what the future holds, because that's what you see when you go to the Gulf.
Because of its scale, its significance in Islam.
He's like, you know what Islam means? Submission. And like, let it hang in the air. Like that was self-evidently disgusting. And I was like, I kind of think submission to God is like the whole point of life, but I didn't say anything. I was like, I don't think I'm against that, actually.
This is an existential threat to the Western way of life. I really believe that.
Anyone who submits to God, like, I'm just for that.
So there we go. So they have put together clips dating from, earlier in Tucker Carlson's career, showing how outspoken he was against Islam. And then in just the last couple of years, boom, something has changed. Now, what has changed? And that, by the way, that's just a big wow. It's hard to watch that montage and not come away with the feeling, the reality that Tucker Carlson has shifted 180 degrees. He's gone one direction all the way in the other. Now, what's going on with that? Now, in his AmFest talk, Carlson expressed the greatest moral outrage against Israel, the attack on the USS Liberty in 1967, and Gaza, and the alleged persecution of American Muslims by American Christians, which is sheer nonsense. Now, as for the USS Liberty, I've not devoted an episode to this, but maybe I will sometime. That is a legitimate line of inquiry. That's a discussion we can have. It's worth having about the Liberty. And if you don't know about the Liberty, the people on Carlson's side, they really make hay with this. The Liberty was an NSA, National Security Agency, what do I want to say, intelligence gathering ship that the Israelis attacked in June 1967. Just, during the 6-day war, they attacked it, and it killed, there were 34 Americans who were killed in the attack, maybe 170 or more who were wounded. And again, this is a legitimate line of inquiry. It's a highly controversial event. LBJ, when he was informed of the attack, President of the United States at that time, he was sure the Soviets had done it, and the Israeli government said, no, they didn't do it. We did it. But it was a mistake. We did not communicate properly with our air defense forces, and there was some misidentification of the vessel. The response of others has been, how could you not have known that it was a U.S. ship? All of these kinds of things. And most recently, Doug Wilson actually addressed this at AmFest. He said, that is it possible that ship, that the NSA was gathering intelligence, not just on the Arabs, but on the Israelis, and the Israelis attacked it. That meaning there's a lot of places we can go with that discussion, because it is a legitimate line of inquiry. And there's going to be people who are going to come into this and say, that I'm just, some paid shill for Israel. Not at all. I am not one of those people who believes that we have to be on Israel's side no matter what. But I will tell you this: if you're on the side of Islam, you're on the wrong side. You are on the wrong side. Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. Do I agree with all their policy? No, I've been there. Israel is a place, to me, that they need Jesus Christ as much as the Arab world needs Jesus Christ. However, I do believe that Israel, while not definitely not perfect in its, and go and watch the episode I did on the on the beginning of this war, where I outline my views regarding Israel and the formation of Israel and the war that's currently taking place there. There have been a number of questionable, and some of them just outright immoral acts committed by the Israeli government. There's no question that is true, and we have to take each instance one by one and evaluate them. However, I'm not on the side of Islam at all. And if you're going to bring up the USS Liberty, which you may do, I'm going to bring up 9/11. And meaning it feels to me like this is Tucker Carlson, what he's doing here, again, that he brings up Gaza without mentioning October 7th, which led to what's happening in Gaza. If you want to bring up the USS Liberty and say this is an indication that the Israel is not trustworthy, I can respond and say, well, Muslims killed 3,000 people just in 9/11. It's more than the 34 on the U.S. Liberty. So if we're going to have the discussion, then let's have it honestly, and let's not just selectively remember some things and selectively suppress others. And again, for Carlson, he keeps talking about free speech and the importance of free speech. There's a kind of self-censoring that Tucker Carlson is engaging in here, because he is deliberately elevating certain things while suppressing others that are relevant to the conversation, very relevant to the conversation. But Tucker Carlson, hopefully you can see the shift, the seismic shift in Carlson's thinking and the imbalanced nature of his logic. You know who detects the shift in Tucker Carlson? Do you know this, Jonathan? Muslims. They have detected the shift in Tucker Carlson, and they love it. Listen to this guy right here. This is a guy by the name of Sami Sami Hamdi. Sami Hamdi. He's a British Tunisian political analyst. Now, listen to what he says in this interview, a Muslim podcast that he's participating in Kuala Lumpur. Kuala Lumpur, I've been there as well. In Kuala Lumpur, let me tell you, there's an enormous, there's a huge, Muslim population there. And anyway, listen to what he says in this podcast.
We saw that we're seeing now right-wing bases. Who would have thought that Tucker Carlson, of all people, would sit there and be the number one advocate against Zionism in America today? Candace Owens, Karima, inshallah, قولوا آمين. Candace Owens, did you guys see the Ted Cruz interview where Tucker Carlson rips into Ted Cruz and just completely destroys him? Matt Walsh likewise, and there's a huge Marjorie Taylor Greene. Sean King said to me when we were in the car once, he said, Sami, you don't understand who Marjorie Taylor Greene is. She's the representative of the most racist area in Georgia. African Americans were told not to go to her area. She's now one of the loudest advocates against Zionism. But here's my point about the Ummah when you said that we've done everything we can. Why has that change taken place? Because we've started to deploy a power that we haven't maxed out yet. We doubted our ability to change people's hearts. When Gaza meant that in the darkness we just wanted to scream, we screamed not intending to convince anybody, and we found the whole world started shifting. The South Africans heard you and went to the ICJ, and as a result of the ICJ, they ruled Israel has to stand trial for genocide. So Itochu of Japan left the Israelis. Companies began to wind down their investments. The Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund began to wind down their investments, resulting in Zionists trying to pass a law in Congress to ban anybody boycotting the Israelis. But because you screamed and people heard your scream and they began asking, the Zionists tried to rely on their traditional allies, who instead decided to pull the bill from Congress, which meant that the bill was never passed. So they said, okay, let's ban TikTok so no one hears the scream. And then when the bill got to the president's office, Donald Trump's son walks into the office and says, Dad, are you really going to ban TikTok? And Donald Trump says, why not? It's really bad. And he says, but Dad, I like TikTok. I like using it. And it helped you a lot. So Donald Trump says, this is Donald Trump's words. He goes, Darren showed me TikTok and I realized it's actually awesome. It's actually cool. And now I'm not going to ban it. I'm going to go 50-50 with the Chinese instead. And the Zionists said, what on earth is going on? So the Zionists then went and they lobbied Trump to go to war with the Iranians. And then when Trump said, no, I'm negotiating a deal with them, the Israelis decided to say to Trump, okay, let's do a limited operation in the hope the Israelis could force him into war. So the Israelis decided to bomb Iran with Trump's permission, but Trump believing it would pressure the Iranians into a deal. Then when Iran hit the Tel Aviv back and the missiles fell on Tel Aviv, the Israelis said to Trump, they hit us. Come on, like Biden would intervene. Harris would intervene. Come on. And Trump didn't do anything first day. Didn't do anything second day. The Israelis said, hey, we're being bombed. Third day, fourth day, fifth day. On the sixth day, Trump comes out and says, these are two guys fighting in the playground. We got to let them have it out. And then when they're done, then we'll intervene and we'll stop. And the Israelis said, what's going on? So then they started a campaign in America, Why Israel Matters. The MAGA guys responded with an AI video where they dress up an American in a military uniform and they tell him, son, you need to go die for Israel.
So here you have Sami Hamdi extolling the virtues of Candace Owens, of Tucker Carlson, and even Marjorie Taylor Greene, and saying, who knew these people would become champions of our cause by becoming anti-Zionist? And I'm sick of all the references to Zionism and how Zionists are evil and this kind of thing. Zionism, ladies and gentlemen, is just simply the belief that Jews deserve their own homeland. That's all it is. That's all it is. And those of you who drop into the chat and on social media and so forth that aren't bots, who are calling it evil and saying that it has some sort of, Talmudic roots and is some sort of demonic force and all this. Again, a lot of these are bots that are being deployed to push this worldview, paid for with Arab money, of course. But others of you are people who are just haters of Jews. You can disagree with someone who's Jewish or Muslim or Christian or anything, but you cross a line when your view is, in the case of Jews that you hate them because they're Jews and you disagree with them because they're Jews. So I'm not of the theological view, as some are, and I would be glad to have a debate on this, but I'm not of the view that we have to just agree with everything that Israel does. You can believe the Holocaust happened, ladies and gentlemen, and still disagree with Israeli policy. You can do that. But again, if you find yourself coming down on the side of Muslims, you need to reevaluate the neighborhood you're in, ideologically speaking. You're in the wrong place. Now, what is it that Hamdi here says when he's thrilled? Tucker Carlson, look at him. He's championing our cause. If anything should raise flags about where Tucker Carlson is, it's this. And by the way, he's not the only one. There are loads of them, who are saying this. I read an article today in a magazine that in the Middle East that spoke of how wonderful Tucker Carlson is and why everybody in the Middle East is listening to him. But Hamdi spoke of something, did you catch it, called dawah. Dawah. It's typically spelled D-A-W-A-H. D-A-W-A-H. And that's the Muslim doctrine of proselytizing and inviting others to investigate and understand Islam. But dawah is really, the way it's typically practiced is a little different. It's about manipulation. It's about emotional manipulation. It's what you're seeing with all of the billions in Arab money pouring into the West, seeking to change. That's the thing he doesn't mention here. It isn't just dawah that is that's changing much of the narrative in the West. It's Arab billions that are flowing in to the West because Arabs have discovered they can buy politicians. Some of you are old enough to remember in the 1970s something called AbScam. The FBI, that was back when the FBI, they were actual, the good guys, but the FBI was looking for dirty politicians in Congress who were taking Arab oil money, and they caught a number of them. And that sting, that operation became known as AbScam. The Arab scam, the Arab scandal that was taking place. We need another one now. We need another AbScam, another sting to see who's taking all this money. But it's definitely influencing media in a big way. And Arabs have learned that their money can be spent in such a way as to influence the conversation and influence policy. But this dawah, this idea of inviting people to understand Islam, I was explaining this, I was talking to my wife. I was talking to Lori yesterday. She was asking me, what's the show going to be on? And I because she sees me, reading different things and listening to different clips. Sometimes it stresses her out because she can hear them. And she's like, that's making me angry, listening to whatever it is. And anyway, I told her that this is going to be about the change in Tucker Carlson. And I said, listen to this clip of him in like 2015, and then listen to what he says, which is exactly the opposite in 2025. And she said, and I thought this was really good. She said, it's almost as if he's been groomed. Because she was saying, do you really think, do you believe the idea that some people put out there that Tucker Carlson, that he's getting, paid, millions and millions of dollars from Arabs to betray his own cause? I don't believe that. It could be coming in a different way to him, but not in that explicit of a way. Money can be used to influence opinions in more subtle ways. And in this case, my theory here, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I don't have proof of this. I have evidence that and that's different from proof. I have things that kind of suggest it to me. Do you remember after Carlson, and by the way, I defended him on this in a viral clip. Carlson went to Moscow, went to the Kremlin, and he interviewed Putin. And the left just went, they just went bonkers over that and denounced him because they didn't want Putin's voice to be heard in the West. I wanted to hear what Putin had to say. And I appreciated Carlson going and doing that. I thought that was very good. Do you remember where he went when he left there, though? He went to Dubai, Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates. So Abu Dhabi's the the capital of the United Arab Emirates, UAE, and he went there. And in one of the clips that you see here, where he's talking about how wonderful Abu Dhabi, Moscow. This made headlines. You may remember that he said that Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and Moscow were nicer places to live than in much of the United States. It depends. How are you defining nice? You mean because there's shiny buildings? Because if you're talking about the laws and the way the laws are structured, these are not nice places to live, especially if you're Jewish or Christian. But he just didn't address that at all. I think you saw recently, a woman who's an American woman who was, she's facing life imprisonment for some drug possession there. I'm sure she's questioning her life choices, right about now, being in that country. By the way, I'm not in any way endorsing her having drugs, but I would say that in the United States, there would be a more gracious response to that. She might get community service. She might even get jail time. She might get a fine. Life imprisonment, she would not get. And that's part of the difference in the way that world is shaped. Singapore is much the same way. I've spent in Singapore for different ideological reasons, but the same kind of strict laws. And those can be wonderful places to live unless you fall afoul of the law. And there's no presumption of innocence in those countries. None. You must prove your innocence, which is a very hard thing to do. It's a presumption of guilt. And that's because they're coming from a basis, a religious basis, that's diametrically opposed to a Christian one. And again, we're kind of getting at the reason why you can't have a coalition with people like that. Their belief system is completely different. Just because they align with you that homosexuality is wrong, you can't just all of a sudden go, well, I guess. Well, they chuck them off buildings. As Christians, as a Christian, I stop short of that. I think it's wrong. But I don't want to go around peeking in people's windows. What you want to do in private, you guys want to go fist each other, you go have at it. But I don't want it forced on my children. I don't want it forced on the public. But what you do privately is entirely up to you. I think Tucker Carlson has been the target of Dawa. They have influenced him by wining him and dining him. When he was in Abu Dhabi, he was the toast of the town. Same thing happened to him in Moscow. He was the toast of the town. And all of a sudden, he's singing Putin's praises, forgetting the fact that Putin has ignored the rule of law a number of occasions. He's just as bad as Zelensky. And magically wins all of the elections, of course, and kills his opponents. But he was nice to Tucker Carlson. It is a problem, ladies and gentlemen. There's a friend of mine, a longtime friend of mine, that I've always detected this flaw in his thinking. He judges people according to how they treat him alone. And some of you are thinking, well, isn't that the way we should evaluate people? No. So take, for example, I read Eric Kempka. Eric Kempka was the driver for Adolf Hitler. And he was not particularly ideological. But I read his, post-war. He wasn't tried at Nuremberg or anything like that. He went on to live a reasonably long life. But I read his memoir, and his take on Adolf Hitler. I also read that of Heinz Linge, who was Hitler's, basically his valet. Both of them were aware of what he was doing to the Jewish people. They were aware of his aggressive warfare. They were aware of things like the Caton Forest Massacre. They were aware of what was done to the French underground. They were aware of all that, but they didn't see it up close and personal, and they kind of hung around with Hitler. And Kempka says, he was so nice to me. He was so generous to me. And when we would go for long drives, because, again, he was a chauffeur, he says Hitler sometimes would sit in the front seat and bring a picnic lunch, and he'd bring a sandwich for me too. Meaning Kempka was judging Hitler by how Hitler treated him. So he comes away and goes, well, Hitler was a really nice guy because he's very generous and kind to me. Yeah, but There should be other things that should factor in. So this person that I'm talking about, sometimes I'd find myself saying when we're younger, you do realize this guy's a drug dealer, right? I mean, I know he's not doing that in front of you and he's nice to you, but you need to choose your friends a little bit better than that. And it feels to me like Tucker Carlson has been nudged in a direction that has softened his view on Russia, softened his view on the Arab world, softened his view on Islam, where he doesn't say that very much anymore because now he has some nice, rich friends in the Middle East who have treated him so graciously and kindly, and he comes away going, you know what, there's so many nice Muslims. That's my theory. Call me naive, but I think that's what's happened with him because I do believe Tucker Carlson is sincere. I think Carlson is sincere. It's hard to listen to that speech of his and not think he's sincere in what he's saying, but he's memory holding certain things, and that's a problem. So I don't think he's being extorted or threatened, or that some Arab cabal has naked pictures of him with a goat. I don't think there's anything like that going on. I think he's been groomed. And there's a subtle use of money. Jonathan is over here cracking up at my remarks over here, and he's done a marvelous job of doing it in such a way that the microphones are not picking it up, but he's rolling over there on the floor. So I believe that they have groomed him. They've wined and dined him. They've lavished him with praise. They've also given him unfettered access to heads of state, to royalty that he's interviewing. And these guys are slick. They know how to butter him up and really, really flatter him, his ego. They know what they're doing. And the result of that has been that they have influenced him. And that, I think, is because Tucker Carlson, at the end of the day, is more sail than anchor. His Christian faith, which I believe is real based on what he had to say in this is the most I've heard him talk about his Christian faith. Maybe he's done it somewhere else and I just missed it. I don't listen to everything that he says. But I think his Christian faith is real. But he's lacking a few tent pegs to hold his worldview to the ground. And the result is that a stiff wind comes along and it kind of carries him away just a little bit. And that seems to me that that's what's going on. According to the International Correspondent, that's not a person, that's a magazine. And we'll put this in show notes as well, so you can read the article. It's a very interesting article. According to the International Correspondent, Tucker Carlson has become, quote, the most watched man in the Middle East. Now, why is that? Because they have detected the shift. And while there are people in the West, Tucker Carlson fans are saying there's been no change with Tucker Carlson. We just demonstrated to you. Milk Bar TV did it brilliantly. Been a massive shift. And that should tell you something. Now, I want to end this program with a quick reference to Erica Kirk, because I haven't said anything about Erica Kirk. I don't know Erica Kirk. I had dinner with Charlie on one occasion, and I knew him. I can't claim to know him well, and certainly wasn't aware of his beliefs on everything. I've never listened to a Charlie Kirk show. I chatted with Charlie and heard Charlie speak a couple of times, but that's the extent of it. And so, no, I never did meet Erica Kirk. But I'm noticing on social media coordinated, deliberate, vicious, hateful, and I mean just dripping with hate, attacks on Erica Kirk. And what it is they take let's put up a photo here. This is a photo here at AmFest, and here she is. She looks like she's about like a pop star. Some of these things, she dresses a bit like a pop star, wearing some of the sequined clothing and this kind of thing. Her wardrobe is entirely up to her. But I do want to make a couple of comments regarding her. If I were her father or her brother or just simply someone in her orbit who knew her very, very well, who had a close relationship with her, I would want to, in a fatherly way, put my arms around her and say, Erica, step away from public life. Not, by the way, because I think she's done anything wrong. I don't think she's done anything wrong. But I would want to say, sweetheart, please step away from public life for a time and heal. Focus on your children. Your husband was murdered. How you recover from that, I just don't even begin to know. But step away. Don't take on all this massive responsibility. There are plenty of people out there who are going to fight for Charlie's legacy. The Lord will fight on his behalf. You don't have to carry all of the weight yourself. You don't have to do that. That's what I'd want to say. Erica Kirk probably has people who have said that to her. And she's chosen to do something else. I don't condemn her for that. Far be it from me to do so. I'm not the grieving widow. And we all handle grief in different ways. And I will tell you this, that in dealing with depression, when dealing with pain, whether it's physical or it is emotional, one of the ways, one of the strategies of medicating that pain is to be with like-minded people, people who care about you, people who love you, people who can make you laugh. And I think it's so evil that they will take a picture of her where she's smiling or giving someone else a hug or she looks full of joy. Sometimes in moments of my greatest pain, I had the most exaggerated laughs. And some of you will know what I'm talking about. Exaggerated laughs and smiles, and it's because somebody said something that in normal circumstances, you'd think, yeah, that's kind of funny. But now you're so desperate to laugh that the little quip or comment, it just felt so good to just give yourself wholly over to it and throw your head back and guffaw because you are hungry for that relief. When my father died, just using him as an example, just a small example, I shed many tears at the loss of my father, but we got together as a family after the funeral, and we were telling stories about my dad. And a lot of those stories are funny. So even in the midst of grief, there was smiling, there was laughing, there was, yes, I remember when he did that, that kind of thing. And so the idea, and these people know this, they're just cynical and evil people, that somehow she is supposed to just melt into a puddle of tears and depression and never be seen or heard from again is complete nonsense. And by the way, some of you are being influenced by this. You're starting to question Erica Kirk's motives and this kind of thing because it is a relentless campaign to attack Erica Kirk in order to attack Charlie Kirk in order to attack America first and to attack the right as a whole. That's the goal here. This isn't just, mean girls doing this. There's a motive in this. And I can't help but notice on social media how coordinated it is, and the language is the same, and it's all pictures of her attacking her in this way. Another reason, by the way, that the left dislikes her is she is an unusually beautiful woman. Erica Kirk is a stunningly beautiful woman, and they hate that. They hate a woman who embraces her femininity, who embraces her role as a woman, and who embraces Christian womanhood, which she does. So again, if she's my daughter, I would say, please. This is a lot of responsibility to take on with little kids. And it's a lot to take on going from one speaking engagement to another and running this multi-million-dollar organization and all of these people. However, I get it. She probably, I'm speculating, she hasn't told me this, wants to be around people who loved her, loved her husband, who love her family, and she probably feels like she's in a very warm cocoon in that, and that there's safety in that, emotional safety in that. So I get it. I thought her interview with Nicki Minaj was fascinating. Nicki Minaj fascinates me, not because I see her as a conservative, but I see her as a woman who is starting to find her voice. And people say, what do you mean find her voice? She's a singer. She's finding the will. She has said before, she tweeted before about the persecution of Christians in Nigeria. She was attacked for it and immediately deleted the tweet. So I wondered if we'd ever hear from her again. And here she is. She deleted her Instagram account, which I think was smart. She just decided, I don't need that money, and I'm not going to give you people a vehicle to get to me, to attack me, and I'm going to say what I think. And so it's going to be very interesting to follow the journey of Nicki Minaj, which I think is going to be different than that of Kanye West. I don't think that the two of them will be the same. So go to LarryAlexTauntonStore.com. This right here, this is one of our beautiful mugs, LarryAlexTauntonStore.com. Go there and buy stuff. Buy lots of stuff. It helps us. We appreciate that. And consider supporting the work of Fixed Point Foundation. You can go to our website. There's lots of ways. You go to LarryAlexTaunton.com, and you'll find ways there that you can give, and you support this organization with a with a tax-deductible contribution. Consider doing that. We would appreciate that very much. This has been another episode of Ideas Have Consequences with me, Larry Alex Taunton.